What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast, your number one source of superhero talk. I'm Nick with my co-hosts Jimmy, Eric, Ruben. Got the whole gang here, so we're excited about that. Before we get started on anything today, it was crazy because I literally saw this update literally like an hour ago, and it was pretty crazy to see. Like I wasn't sure if this person was sick or if they had any health problems, but Neil Adams, a famed comic book writer and one of the more legendary ones around right now, just recently passed away. And he did a lot, had a huge impact on comics as a whole. He helped reshape characters like Batman, Green Lantern, and Green Arrow. He was 80 years old, and he fought for, the cool thing about him too is he fought for creators' rights in comics. He conducted regular Q&A sessions with fans on social media, which is not something that is very relevant or something that a lot of comic writers are doing at his age. So that was pretty cool to see. So obviously he was somebody who really wanted to give back and really loved and had a lot of passion for this industry, and given that he was always willing to engage in Q&As with fans on social media. And he created and co-created beloved characters, including Jon Stewart, Ra's al Ghul, and Man-Bat. So rest in peace, Neil Adams. Your legacy will live on forever. So one of the interesting things, and one of the more baffling
really
things
quick,
is that
Neil Adams is actually the artist. He was when him and Denny O'Neil did those things. Denny O'Neil wrote most of it. Neil Adams is more of the artist, kind of redefining Batman's look.
Right. Yeah, so definitely someone who was very influential and should always be remembered in this industry. So rest in peace, Neil Adams. Your legacy lives on. So one of the more baffling things that happened, and more confusing because I had no idea who this character was, and I think Eric was the only one out of us who knew who he was, but Bad Bunny has been cast as the first lead in it's funny because the head title said Marvel film, but Sony, more Sony, obviously because they have the rights to this universe, but he was cast as El Muerto, which is a luchador kind of character in Spider-Man's universe. And the funny thing too about this was that he has like one story with Spider-Man, but we'll just let Eric kind of take it away from there because he's the expert on this topic. So
yeah,
Eric, take it away.
So I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite Spider-Man stories, but it's a pretty good one. And I think because myself being Mexican, I can relate to luchador culture, right? Like my family loves going to the lucha libre matches back home in Mexico. So the whole story goes that El Muerto is part of this family that has these powers that are passed on, but it's almost like they're oppressed by, I think it's like a demon. I forgot the demon's name, but basically they have 10 years to keep their powers and have that like super strength. But if they don't do what the demon says or like don't listen, they basically lose their life. And so El Muerto's father dies, and then he inherits the powers, and the demon basically tells him, you have 10 years to unmask a worthy opponent, or else you're gonna die as well. I will come for you. And the whole idea is that he's just looking for a worthy opponent, and J. Jonah Jameson points him towards Spider-Man. And he sets up this whole like charity event where it's gonna be Spider-Man versus El Muerto. Is like a lot of people are gonna go, a lot of people are watching, and it's an unmasking wrestling match. And I think it's pretty cool because it kind of goes back to Spider-Man's original like wrestling roots, like a part of his origin story. So right. it goes into that. The whole idea, and I guess spoilers, but the whole idea in the story is that El Muerto gets actually really close to unmasking Spider-Man. Last minute, Spider-Man wins, and then helps Muerto defeat the demon that was going to come and kill him. So, and that's just kind of where that story ended. Like, I don't think there might be like just bits and pieces where El Muerto comes back and maybe is like a frenemy with Spider-Man, but that's about it. He's not a mainstay in Marvel comics at all, especially not in Spider-Man's comics. So I think it's really, really interesting that they picked him.
Mm-hmm. And granted, I used to be one of those people that always had those complaints when certain projects like this were announced, and you would hear people say, "Who asked for this?" Because obviously, one of those things that came out of the "Who asked for this" was Batman Beyond, and I'm not gonna say that this is gonna be comparable to Batman Beyond, with the kind of legacy and the kind of reception it's going to get. But I'm more intrigued by it, especially because Bad Bunny seems to be very passionate and seems to be very enthused for it, which he had said recently, I love wrestling. I grew up watching wrestling and I'm a wrestler. Obviously, we saw that with his performance in the WWE recently. And he goes on to say, I'm a former champion, so this is why I love this character. I think it's going to be the perfect role to me, and it will be epic. And he was in Narcos and something else you had said, right, Eric?
Yeah, he was in Narcos, and I actually think he did a good job acting on that show. So,
I think I was surprised to see him in the WWE too, because he actually did better than I expected, and most of the people would say that it was pretty well received. But it just is a little bit. I think the thing that is just interesting also is this character who doesn't really have a long-running history in the Spider-Man mythos. And then you're getting Bad Bunny to play him, which is his first actual starring role. And yes, he seems very enthused, very excited for this project. But at the same time, it's just still pretty baffling to me.
At the end of the day, this is still coming from Sony. And at this point,
exactly,
I don't have any faith in what they're doing or what they're up to at all. It seems really desperate. I mean, it's cool in a way that we're getting a Latino, like a superhero or supervillain movie, however, anti-hero movie. But like you said, it's just weird that they picked this. Since it's such an obscure, not an obscure character, but less often used.
Well, pretty obscure. He's pretty obscure. Like,
yeah, okay. I'm not trying to be disrespectful by saying obscure, but like, it just seems kind of like a desperate move on Sony's part. And it's just like, I'm sure Bad Bunny will probably do a good job in the role. He seems pretty passionate about it. But I just have doubts with the type of, with the teams that they hire at Sony.
Yeah, the screenwriting.
Yeah. I mean, we had talked about that in Morbius and how and then those same writers from Morbius are going to be writing Man of Web. So I'm wondering if these guys are also going to be writing this El Muerto spin-off, because that's going to be very interesting too.
I hope not. I mean, they need to get, I don't know, they need to get some good people with good track records writing the script and behind the camera.
Definitely.
It's to work out. And if that story really involves Spider-Man, let's hope that they find a way to put Spider-Man in it, whether it's Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield or whatever they choose to go with.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what do you think about this, Ruben? You're on mute, brother.
Wow, I thought this whole time I was unmuted. Crazy. All over here laughing, agreeing and everything. Like there, like, yeah, you're right. I agree. Oh my lord. Rookie mistake.
All good, man.
But no, like Eric was saying, like growing up, you know, especially when I would go to Mexico to go visit, you know, family out there, just getting the little lucha libre, you know, little toys, the little ring, everything. And so I think it's interesting as well, like he was saying, because it's something different, you know. I mean, like Jimmy's saying, it could be like a reach, you know. We don't know what Sony is doing with this, or we don't know who pushed to make this happen, you know. But I guess on my aspect, it's interesting just for that same reason, because I like the unknown sometimes. But I just hope it has like Bad Bunny, like you said, Bad Bunny. I swear I saw Narcos, but I can't remember seeing him. I gotta rewatch that now. But I think he'll play it off. I think he'll end up playing it off. Anything Spider-Man, yeah, we always hope for him to be involved some way, somehow. So as long as they make that happen or lead it into, because they say all that Sony universe is going to coincide, you know what I'm saying? So they're going to be introduced some way, somehow down the line,
exactly.
I think. But I'm just, I'm intrigued, I guess. Or not intrigued, I don't want to say that. Yeah, I'm interested in it just because it sounds interesting and little things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is kind of interesting, but my problem is that it's not actually a bad idea to try to take an obscure character and make a movie about it. And it seems like you can make a good movie out of that story. And I'm all for that. And even for the casting of Bad Bunny, but it's just, I don't trust Sony to hire the right people to do this. Yeah. That is what it comes down to.
Especially after Morbius.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think if you have the correct like director behind it and the right screenplay, it could end up being really good. We've seen what James Gunn has been able to do with obscure characters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think if you have the right combination, the right team, it might be able to see something good come out of this. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Honestly, it's cool we live in this day and age now where we're getting more diverse characters and, you can have more of like that feeling that you're watching these kind of characters and it feels more wholesome in a way. But the only thing giving it that negative connotation is that fact that it's coming from Sony. I think if this was under the MCU, nobody would really be having these kind of concerns, these kind of doubts. People would say, oh, wow, they're going this route and having this obscure character who's only had like one Spider-Man story or was only around for like that one thing. And honestly, hearing Eric actually explain this character's backstory and how he came about, he sounds interesting, but it's just more so that it comes from Sony, and Sony doesn't have a good track record and doesn't even really seem to care about getting the right people involved in the writing process. Not so much behind the camera, but just the ones creating these projects, and especially just because they've hired those same people from Morbius over to Madam Web, which is kind of baffling to me also. So go in with an open mind, not exactly sure what to expect. Hopefully Bad Bunny kills it, and we get to at least see some kind of semblance of Spider-Man in this universe, or whether it be, I'm assuming it would be more Garfield than it would be Holland, because this is probably going to be connected more towards Venom and Morbius and that Sony-verse kind of thing that they're doing. That now also includes the Vulture for some weird reason. But
and not only that, I forgot to mention that it's the first solo Latino film as a superhero.
That's
yeah,
exactly.
So that's breaking barriers right there.
Yeah.
At least Sony's doing something right there.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, we knew that this was coming because it was pretty obvious, but the Batman 2 and Venom 3 have officially been greenlit, so we don't exactly know what's going to happen with that. Obviously, I would be more excited to see the Batman 2, and we have also just talked about Sony's mishaps and fumbling of their shared Spider-Man universe. Hopefully, they can redeem themselves in some kind of capacity. Waits to be seen on what the plot or the story is going to be. Something also pretty interesting that I was really excited for, and I know I've talked about my love for this movie and this comic in its told it all together, but the Crow reboot has been revived with Bill Skarsgård, who played It in the rebooted It Part 1 and 2 recently. He's going to be Eric Draven / The Crow, which is a pretty good choice. This project was in development hell. It was revealed that Luke Evans was going to play him. Luke Evans, if you remember, he actually played Dracula in Dracula Untold. He was the villain Shaw in, I want to say, Fast 6 in 2013, the British villain. He was the brother of Jason Statham's character. He also was Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. He was supposed to be playing this character. He dropped out, and then Momoa actually got cast to be it, which is a pretty cool I kind of went against it a little bit because obviously Eric Draven was kind of like a lean, more of a small frame character, and obviously Momoa, 6'4", freaking mountains of muscle, was a little bit different. But I was actually really enthused for it. He ended up dropping out, and then it seemed like this project wasn't going to get remade. Especially me being a big fan of The Crow, Brandon Lee killed it, and it was such a unique, fresh take on the super, and especially at that time. Like, you had Darkman, and then you had this, but you had really no like superhero stories or superhero movies that had came out based off of the comics. Or, well, Darkman was its own thing, which we need to talk about eventually someday. But it just seemed very unique for its time, and it's just really cool that we're getting this. Bill Skarsgård is a very, very good actor. I think it's gonna do well. But what about you guys? Are you guys excited to see a reboot of The Crow?
I think that there's potential in it. I think that's a good choice. I mean, I wouldn't have minded Jason Momoa, but Skarsgård is a lot closer to what that character is supposed to look like.
Most definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. This movie's gonna really depend on who's directing it more than the actor, in my opinion, because the original, it has such a cult following because of like the dark tones and
that gothic atmosphere, the music.
Right. Yeah. Like that's what made that movie like so appealing. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think
it's going to be hard because for a lot of people who like idolize that film, because there's like a strong cult following that
for sure
loves that movie. For a lot of people, there will never be any replacement for the original. Like I've seen a lot of skepticism about this online.
Definitely. I think I kind of fall somewhere in the middle where I have such a love and such a huge appreciation for that movie that they made with Brandon Lee. But at the same time, I was asking myself, what would a reboot look like in a modern setting? I don't know if exactly they're going to capture that same feel just because it got that gothic, dark, bleak tone so perfect that I don't know how they could replicate it or do it in their own way and have like that same kind of feeling, or because it was just perfect where it captured that tone from the comics. Maybe they could do something where it might be a little bit more faithful, but I'm somewhere in between where I want to see this. At the same time, I'm like, you know what? That 1993 movie was perfect. And I was okay with the fact that this late in development hell looked like it wasn't going to get made, but still really excited for it. And we'll see what happens from here, especially once we know who's directing it. Because so far, this has been revived, but if this doesn't get a director anytime soon, then it could just probably not get. This is like 6-7 years that it's just late in development hell. So we'll see what happens with that. Something pretty interesting also is the Harley Quinn spinoff Kite Man gets series order from HBO Max, which I am pretty freaking excited for. Kite Man is so freaking hilarious in the show. What about you guys? Are you guys stoked for this series?
Yeah, as ridiculous as it sounds, I kind of am. It sounds ridiculous, but that character was one of the funniest things on Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And like you said, we should see more obscure characters. So we'll see. Yeah.
And I think DC seeing the value in really pushing these obscure characters to the forefront, especially on HBO Max, right? Like we have like Doom Patrol, which I like that series. Obviously, we just had Peacemaker. Like they're doing justice to these other lesser known characters, and yeah, especially if you have the same creative team behind the Harley Quinn series, it's gonna be good.
I think.
Yeah, I'm excited for it without a doubt. It's like you guys are saying, all these characters that don't get much love are starting to get the love that they do deserve. You know what I'm saying? Especially as a comic collector, comic reader, you sometimes run into these characters where you're like, wow, it's kind of funny, it's kind of ridiculous, or like, wow, this is really all they wrote about. So see, that's why I'm coming to love. Well, I've always liked it. I think more people are coming to love that kind of thing because it's like for the people that don't know the characters or don't read into that much, it's new to them. So there's a new way to introduce these characters for the modern era. So I think it's pretty cool.
These types of projects always feel a little bit more fresh because of less familiarity with the public, and I think that helps. Like especially a show like you were saying, like Peacemaker. I think that's one of its benefits is using so many obscure characters for it.
Yeah, just Harley Quinn in it alone is just like
great show.
It's just character. It's gonna be crazy stuff to see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, especially something like this is because it's not something to where it's so faithful and adapting something from the comics, but it's its own thing. It's more of a parody, and it was funny too because I didn't want to watch the show in the very beginning. It wasn't until we were at Eddie's house and they sat me down. They're like, dude, you need to watch this. Trust you're going to like it. It is hilarious. And I'm like, no. This looks horrible. This got Kaylee Coco voicing Harley Quinn. This is nothing like that. Not my Harley. And just within that first scene too, I'm like, oh, this is the funniest thing I've seen in a long freaking time. And I can't believe it got made. And it's on HBO Max. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
Kite Man was one of the more funnier aspects of the show too, just given that that's such a D-list character who gets his time to shine and is seen as a joke, but is so wholesome and is somebody who is just so genuine in his actions that you just can't help but root for him, despite his low status.
I like the references to Kite Man on Peacemaker, where
the scene that on the newspaper clipping, that was pretty funny.
Yeah. He's always like he's bragging about having beat Kite Man in a fight, like it's some
I was hoping did they ever mention like Condiment King? Was that somebody who ever was made a reference to in Peacemaker? I thought I had seen that somewhere.
I don't know.
They should have. That would have been
on
funny.
Harley Quinn.
I know that, but I thought maybe I'd seen on Peacemaker. But pretty funny to see and cool to see that they're having like their own little universe with that. And I actually kind of want to see a Bane series based off of his portrayal in Harley Quinn. That's probably one of my more favorite characters, to be honest.
Bane.
Maybe someday. And also interesting news, at CinemaCon recently, it was revealed General Zod will return in the Flash film. Probably going to be something to where he goes back in time. Michael Shannon is going to be reprising his role from Man of Steel. So interesting stuff also. What was that, Ruben?
Oh, I said I like that move. I don't mind it.
Yeah, he was a great General Zod.
Yeah.
Definitely. Wait, was more a little bit surprised just because it seemed like this kind of came out of left field and this movie is supposed to come out pretty soon, but we'll see. I think it's going to be something to. I don't expect him to come back in some capacity. It's probably going to be a one-off kind of thing. It just kind of sucks that they killed him. I was hoping that they would have sent him to the Phantom Zone so we could have seen him come back because that's a really great actor and a really great character. But pretty cool that we're getting this. And last but not least, if you have seen the trailers, and I'm super excited for this, can't wait for it for next week. But the Illuminati has officially been confirmed to appear in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We had seen this in the clip. We had seen, I want to say, Maria Rambeau, Captain Marvel also appears in this 15-second clip. We see Captain Carter also appear, and we see Professor X in his yellow hovering chair that he has from the X-Men series from the 90s series. So that's pretty cool. But Muerto actually tells Strange while he's being taken in that the Illuminati will see you now. So this is not something that came as a total surprise. We had pretty much speculated that it was what it was going to be, that they were going to be into it, because where he goes in front of the council and then you see obviously hear Patrick Stewart talking that we should tell him the truth. Obviously everybody was hinting at this has got to be like their version of the Illuminati. Maybe it'll be kind of like a multiverse version of the Illuminati. But what do you guys think about this, that we finally get this fully confirmed? And who do you guys speculate could be the other members of the Illuminati?
There's so many rumors going on around this.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So there's Captain Carter, and I think that'll directly reference the What If series, right? Because we also see the evil Doctor Strange,
and we see a few characters from there too.
Yeah. So I think we can maybe see some of the other characters from What If series. Maybe the T'Challa that we see in there. I don't know. In one way or another, they might be able to do that. Or like Killmonger, I guess.
Mariner.
Yeah. So there's I don't know. There's so much that can happen here. I'm happy that clip that we had seen before, where a lot of people were thinking it was Superior Iron Man, where it's way more clear now that it's Captain Marvel.
Well, I was actually hoping it was Nova.
Nova, yeah.
That would have been cool to be Nova.
I guess that
would
be
like a brand new suit, though. The way that looks, it looks completely different than her usual one that we've seen.
But yeah, it's definitely
it's Maria Rambeau, so it's a different, probably from obviously another universe.
Very true. Thanks for the correct.
So I mean, I'm still waiting for Mr. Fantastic to make his appearance.
Yes.
Fantastic Four. So
I want to see Mr. Fantastic also.
I mean, I have a Fantastic Four right here. It's always here on my desk. I was waiting for it.
John Krasinski is waiting for that call to be Mr. Fantastic in the MCU. We know he's on standby. He can't deny it anymore. He's going to be our Mr. Fantastic.
He fits the part. He fits the part.
He does, dude. He does.
You don't agree, Eric?
I just think it's funny. I don't know. I can't. Because I know he can act too. He can act his ass off. He does really good. But it's just like such a meme at this point. Everyone's like, it's gonna be John Krasinski. I was like, okay, sure. But yeah, there's way too many rumors about this, and everyone's talking about everything. I think that this movie, it has like a 2-hour runtime. It's definitely gonna be just action, like from the start to finish. Because there's so much that people are talking about is gonna be packed into 2 hours. Like it has to go.
That's also shorter than the average superhero film these days.
Yeah,
that's quite a bit shorter.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be up there with like No Way Home, where like you start off and you just move quickly from one scene to the next, and I'm not mad at that at all. I like that. I like that we're getting to see more of America Chavez. I don't know if you saw that, like I think it was like a 2-minute clip of Doctor Strange fighting the monster, and you see more of America Chavez. I'm excited to see her powers. I think she's going to be one of the key like fixtures in the future of the MCU.
Yeah, she has to be.
Yeah, so sure. I'm excited to see her and see her powers play out. I also think Doctor Strange looks a lot more powerful than in some of the other stuff that he's been in. I mean, granted in Endgame, this dude was his only job was to make sure no one got wet. But
Well, he brought everyone back.
he brought everyone back and it just made sure no one was wet.
Yeah.
Really
It works.
quick, you know how this movie's going to be referencing like apparently animated universes?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So are they just going to be live action then, but the animated universe?
I think
Well,
I'm gonna
from what
cross.
Yeah, from what we saw of the hover chair, it looks like it might be that. Like they'll just make costumes that look like the show did, but in live action, which would be nutty to see like an actual Wolverine costume or something, or like Cyclops. Like,
Well, I wouldn't
Oh,
even
that'd
be.
be so
bizarre.
cool.
yeah,
It's gonna look
I
bizarre.
wouldn't be surprised if a mini like 2 minutes or 30 seconds, because 30 seconds is a long time screen time. Yes.
I mean,
Where it's gonna be animated and then it'll transform to like real life. I think that's how Captain Carter is gonna be. It's gonna be one of those things where it's gonna open a portal, obviously, because it's Doctor Strange.
and Chavez, America Chavez. That's what she
And
does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
punches.
So it's gonna be
portals.
like, it's gonna be animated for a few seconds, and then when the hand reaches out of something, it starts
Yeah.
transforming and all that.
Okay,
It'll be something like that.
that's exactly what I want to see, Ruben. I don't want to just see it straight live action. I want to see that universe acknowledged as being a 2-dimensional as opposed to a 3D.
Yeah, I want to see that
Definitely.
creatively for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. A lot of good things going on, but it's crazy that we only have one more week for this
For
movie
real.
to come out. I
know.
really can't. I have to go out and buy like a Doctor Strange shirt. I just have a Marvel shirt.
I'm
I don't
about
have
to go
Strange
buy a cape, bro.
I'm gonna have my friends just like lift me up while I go like this or something. So moving on from that, this week Moon Knight episode 5 just dropped in. This is a pretty cluster F of an episode, just like the last one was, but even more so. One of the things that really stood out to me, and one of the things that I really loved and appreciated, and it's something that we talk about a lot, it's not something that it has to be at the forefront, but it's always cool when they acknowledge this and that they pay credence and pay homage to it. But there was so much comic influence from Moon Knight to the source material. So we got obviously Randall Spector, who that's actually he has a brother named Randall in the comics. He actually becomes a villain called Shadow Knight, one of his nemesises. We also saw that this version of Moon Knight, of Mark Spector, is actually Jewish. In the comics, he's Jewish. So we saw a lot of that. And it was a little bit more of an interesting aspect because obviously Oscar Isaac isn't Jewish. And for the longest time, I actually didn't even know that he was Latino because Isaac is his middle name. So he's one of those characters that looks ethnically ambiguous. So it's not one of those things that's like a huge issue. Oh, well, they didn't cast an actor who is not Jewish and they're portraying him as Jewish. But we had seen that he had the Star of David necklace in that final episode, I think in episode 2, when he wakes up and he's in Egypt. You see the Star of David necklace around his neck. So obviously we had known that this character was going to be portrayed as Jewish. So it was cool that they had that aspect also. And we see like when the same situation to how he gets his Moon Knight powers, to where Khonshu calls upon him to be his avatar. The temple for Khonshu is actually very similar to the comics. And not only that, but the same situation where his partner, Raoul Bushman, betrays him and kills Layla's dad. The character is Marlene in the comics, but pretty much the same character, just swapped out for an Egyptian actress. And same kind of story and setup to how he gets his powers. He was left for dead, and Khonshu calls upon him to be his fist of vengeance. So I would say that was one of the really cool aspects I really enjoyed, because it at least shows that they're trying to pay respect and pay homage to the source material. So that's something that stuck out right from the start. But what about you guys? What did you think overall of this episode and the connections to like Black Panther, all the Egyptian mythology references, and just Oscar Isaac's amazing performance? Because this guy deserves all the credit in the world, and he just knocks it out of the park in this episode, portraying obviously Mark and Steven as separate entities. So what did you guys think overall of this episode?
This was a very emotional episode. It was really deep. And I think that's kind of been a running theme. I was telling my wife this. I think it's been like a running theme with these Marvel shows. Like there is some sort of like emotional trauma, or at least like damage with each of these characters. Like you saw it clearly in WandaVision, right? But then you see it in Falcon Winter Soldier. We saw it in Loki. Like they're digging deeper into these characters and the trauma that they have in the past and how to move past it. And I think that's really cool that they're going that deep, where it's not very surface level, just action and that's it. I think we're us as viewers are actually getting to understand these characters and actually like starting to really like them and really like root for them. And I think because we saw like Mark Spector's past and what he's been through and why he created Steven and all that, like I think that just makes you want to root for him even more, right? Like it now, like I really want to see what happens, like how he gets to Arthur, how he saves
It's
everyone.
also
Like,
kind of it's sad for Steven too, because when he realizes his existence and what it is, and he says like,
Yeah.
"Wasn't I just your stress ball?" That would
Yeah.
be to feel like a person, like a human being, and to realize that you're not even real. You're like the construct of somebody else's personality would probably be. I don't know how you would even handle that as a person. You wouldn't even feel real.
Yeah.
I think this is the best episode of the show so far. And earlier on the first episode, you had meant something, and I made a joke, or I made a kind of a crack, because Oscar Isaac said this is the first character study since Iron Man. I was like, I feel like the recent Marvel movies have kind of been doing that already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind
remember
of
that.
get what he means, because they really, really go for it. I feel like this is the most like intense. So I was like, I kind of get what you mean. I still disagree a little bit, but I get what you mean by that. They really delve into his trauma deeply. I didn't expect it to go to the places it went. It kind of reminded me of the show Mr. Robot. I don't know if any of you've ever seen that.
Yeah.
Oh, great show.
Yeah, that's a lot of what it reminds me of in terms of the trauma, the personalities, how he deals with childhood abuse. And Oscar Isaac is amazing in this. Like, really, like possibly his best performance. The way that he confronts a lot of the trauma, the moment where he's out on the street in the middle of the street and like letting his grief out after his mom died. It's just pretty strong stuff.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac is just this episode really shows like his range, because there's no, and I don't know how they did it, like the scenes where they're in the same rooms together, like you can clearly tell that they're different people, right? Like it's really like from an acting perspective, like even in the way that they run and their mannerisms and just like their facial expressions, like you can tell which one's Steven and which one's Mark. And I think that's really cool. Nick, were you gonna mention how they like the technology behind it, how they do that?
So I don't exactly know the technology, but what I do know is that he was acting against his brother. So it wasn't like they filmed it separate. Well, obviously they filmed it separately, but in the scenes where he's acting as Steven, his brother is acting as Mark, and when he's Mark, his brother's acting as Steven. So I think that helps out in his performance, because obviously if he was just standing there talking to a blank space, then it would have been harder. At least if he's able to interact and have that banter or the dialogue bounce off of one another, I think that helps aid in his performance. But obviously a lot of this is focused on him, so he definitely gets a lot of credit. I think it helped aid in his performance, but still, you gotta give a lot of props to this guy for what he was able to do. It was cool that we saw that connection to Black Panther too. I'm trying to think, what is the name of like their version of the ancestral plane, right?
The ancestral plane.
Yeah. So that was cool that we had that kind of reference to it, because I like the minute that popped out, I was watching it with one of my roommates, and I was like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like, ooh, Black Panther, and he was like, what's that? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, that's the like when he goes after he gets the heart-shaped herb and they put him in the ground, that's like where he goes to see his ancestors. So, and then we also got a little bit of a further allusion to that when they go outside and they're on what is that called? The Sea of Dunes, or the Sea of Sand, or what is that? The obviously the skyline is purple, so that definitely reminded me of the ancestral plane too. But one of the things that I thought about, and one of the things that made sense to me, and this is something that's obviously going around, but do you guys believe that Khonshu killed Randall, his brother?
Oh, what? I hadn't even thought about
that's something going around. Obviously, he can control the weather and everything like that, and especially because when you think about in the comics, where he had that connection to him at a young age, and then we also had that further allusion to where Harold says, do you feel that Khonshu chose you because you were easy to break, or because you're already broken? And then we see just the domino effect of what that did, to where his mom, obviously all that trauma with his mom, and his mom blaming him for the death and hating him and causing him to create this alternate person, to create the Stephen Grant personality and have to deal with those beatings. So I feel like Khonshu might have had a hand in what happened to his brother.
I personally don't think so, just because when you saw him in like Moon Knight form, you could tell that Khonshu was frustrated by the fact that Steven kept coming in. And because of that, I don't think he picked them knowingly, like knowing that he had this like split personality. And it sounds like the whole, he says it in this episode. He said like 2 months prior was when his mother died, and that's when Steven started coming into play a lot more. Yeah. So that was actually after the pact he already had done with Khonshu. So I think, I mean, you might be onto something.
Yeah.
But
well, it's just something I thought of, just because I knew about how volatile and how antagonistic he comes to be in the comics. So that just kind of more thought like, what if he was setting him up to make it? Because even with like one of the first things he says when he sees him at the temple when he's about to commit suicide is your mind is fascinating, it's broken. So I'm like, well, what if he had a hand in all of that? It, like I said, it's just a theory, you don't have to believe it, but it's just one of those,
like the Chief in Doom Patrol a little bit.
Exactly, something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's insane to think about. I also like what you said about the ancestral plane. I don't know if you know, in Marvel Comics, basically like all religions are true, right? So that's what it comes down to. And like I was reading one of my favorite stories, a Guardian Devil with Daredevil, and like Doctor Strange will like use his power sometimes to like look in the different ancestral planes, or in like the Christian heaven, or like Judaism and all that, and it's like all of them exist at once. And I think this is the first time,
even like old mythology gods like Thor.
Exactly, like Thor. Yeah.
Or Greek mythology too. Obviously, we have Hercules.
And we have in the movies we're gonna see Zeus, right? So exactly. I think it's really interesting that this is kind of the first time we see the MCU touch on it and be like, oh yeah, that's true too, and this one's true. So it just like opens up a whole lot of possibilities more for like that like supernatural element of the MCU. So I think that's really cool that they touched upon that. And I mean, I'm still this episode was so confusing because it kept jumping between like oh yeah, like I'm talking to the goddess and we're on the boat, and then you're back in the office with Dr. Harrow, and they kept like jumping back and forth. It was almost like Inception. And I was like, okay, well, what's actually happening? Is he actually in the afterlife, or is this all in his head again? And so it's still kind of leaving it open. And I can't believe that there's only one episode left, because there's still so much to answer.
Two, right? 7 episodes, right?
I think it's a 6 episode.
I know, 6 episodes.
Oh shit! I thought it was. Maybe you guys are right. I thought it was 7.
No, it was 6 episodes. I gotta be honest. I had the same thought. I was thinking that's a lot to leave open with only one episode left. Usually on most shows, when you open up that many different things or that many issues or problems, that's leading to a new multiple episode arc. So it'll be interesting how they wrap this up.
Well, it's gonna be a 2-hour finale watch.
That would make sense, which is basically the equivalent to 2 episodes. That would make sense.
I think that's the one. I don't want to say issue. That was the one thing I was disappointed in this episode. I love how they dove deep into who Mark Spector is and his character, but I feel like the story itself that we've been following this whole time didn't move forward. Like, we're still stuck at the same place where what happened to Mark? He got shot. Like, we're still there. So we'll see where it goes. But I have total faith in this show just because of what they've given us thus far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's going in a good direction.
What about everything that we've seen? Because obviously this is a huge character study of Mark, and we dove deep into who this character is, his motivations, what makes him who he is. Do you guys feel this redeems him in any sense, or that it's something to where you sympathize with him? And they do they do a little bit of that where they try, even though he's haunted by the deaths of the people that he's killed, he does go on to say like they were all bad guys, obviously with the exception of his brother, which he feels guilty for. But in the beginning, this was kind of made to pick him out to be this homicidal maniac who just kills for some Egyptian deity. Do you guys feel this kind of redeems him in a way?
I think it makes you understand him better. I don't know if necessarily redeem, but yeah, I guess a little bit more redeemable. So you have a better understanding of why he is. Because people don't just end up that way for no reason.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, at the end of the episode, he's literally redeemed, right? His scales balance.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I think that this was almost like a metaphor for him having to go through like each of those memories each step and forgive himself for what he had done. And you really see that in how like Steven was created for him to deal with a lot of that trauma, and he like encounters him and he has to show it to Steven, and at the end his scales aren't balanced until he's able to let Steven go.
Exactly.
Until he's gone. And I thought that was actually like, I mean, it's right at the end of the episode, but it was such a powerful moment for him to kind of like come back to who he is, right? And I think that's really important too, that him and Steven got to see how he became the Moon Knight, and right away Steven's like, he manipulated you, like that's what he says.
Yeah.
And have you guys read the 2016 run?
That's the Jeff Lemire. That's the one that this mostly references, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I've read some of it. Okay. I haven't got around to reading all of it, but this is definitely a lot of referencing there.
Yes, because near the end of it, there's a lot of that happening where he like comes to terms with himself and with the different persons in him. So like Jake, Mark, and Steven come to terms together and then understand that Khonshu isn't this like great being, right? And they almost like turn against him in the final chapters, the final comics. But I kind of want to see, and I think we're starting to see the first steps in that yes, we had these Moon Knight powers, but in the end, like we were manipulated, right? So I don't know, I'm excited to see where this goes. I think it's really cool how it's kind of coming together, and they answered a lot of questions from the past, but now like to be able to move forward in the story again.
Definitely. And it was, I thought that this was a little bit of a bold choice, and I had wondered it from the very beginning, because obviously we see Mark dressed all in white and Steven's dressed in dark. So I'm like, that's a little bit of an interesting choice, because obviously white would be the color that is with characters that are, you would dress a character white who is more pure, more good. So obviously I thought that was an interesting kind of thing they were doing. And then at the end, we see why, because Steven dies, he's dressed all in black, and then Mark is dressed in white to symbolize life. So we had that foreshadowing in the very beginning, and I think those are a lot of things that this show does with a lot of the set design, the wardrobe choices that a lot of people don't fully pay attention to. So from the beginning, I'd seen that. I'm like, I wonder if this is foreshadowing that Steven is...
Out of any of the Marvel series I've seen, it's the one that has like the most things that you have to actually pay attention to, like really pay attention to items like clothes that people are wearing, items that are lying around. They usually symbolize something more. That's what's going on. Like you said, it's just foreshadowing the way that they're dressed. Like there's a lot more clues laid in this than there is in a lot of stuff. Actually, it's very detailed. And I'm sure it's something that if you watched it again, you would notice those things a lot more the second time.
Yeah.
And it's also been kind of hinted at that Jake Lockley, the other personality from the comics who appears, is one of the other ones. But it's rumored that he actually appears in one of the scenes with Harrow. And there's a little bit of an interesting choice, too. It seems like Oscar Isaac kind of changes his voice a little bit. And one of the things, obviously, he had done to separate his personalities was do different accents. So I'm wondering if that, and also too in the next scene that we see where we think he's talking to Mark, and the next scene he talks to Steven, he's wearing a bandage over his nose that wasn't there before, and then it's gone when he's talking to Steven. So a lot of people are speculating that was actually Jake that he was talking to.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, we're still waiting to see Jake, so that would I wouldn't put it past anyone if they
And-
really believe that.
Do you guys foreshadow? Do you guys plan or see that Steven will make another appearance, or will come back to Mark sometime soon, or will they're sharing their body?
I think with how it ended, I think Mark might go back to try and save Steven somehow. I don't know if it's like mentally or
But that's
like
a lot to do
through the
within the
plane.
last episode.
I know.
Comparing with everything else it has to wrap up, I'm like, that sounds like a whole episode right there.
Well, I don't think you can just leave Steven dead though, because that's essentially where this episode ended, right? Where he's stuck in the sand. That's essentially like hell for them. That he's dead.
I actually think that you notice that right after Steven dies, the scales are balanced.
Yeah.
I think part of him being balanced had to let go of the confronting things and kind of let go of the part of himself that was created to protect him from who he was. It might be symbolizing that Steven, or having the other personality, made his soul unbalanced because it shielded him from ever having to confront anything himself.
I think so too. I mean, obviously we see him go through that, and then we're pretty much, Steven is pretty much the audience with us, so we're going through him confronting it also with him and going straight to face, saying like, Mark, it wasn't your fault. And I think that was part of it also too, was that I don't know if we're in that aspect, if we'll see Steven back, because this episode was about him letting go of that and just being able to take that responsibility and that accountability and say, yeah, I've done this. I meant well, and I had to do what I had to do to survive. I'm not proud of it, but this is who I am. This is what I've done, and not running away from it. Because obviously that trauma is what caused him to create that other personality. And obviously, shield him from the fact that he didn't. Also, you could say that about Steven too, because Steven thought he had a good mother, and we show him that wasn't the case. And you even see Mark telling him, like, she wasn't a good mother. You got to let that go. So I think this is about both of them being able to reconcile their past. Well, obviously Mark, but also Steven, and being able to confront that fact that he's actually an illusion and he's not the real person. So I think that both you could say both technically counteract each other, and was the thing that was preventing them from that.
So the only reason I think that Steven needs to come back, or he will come back, is because when the scales were being balanced, it wasn't one heart. It wasn't just Mark Spector's heart. It was two hearts on there. And I think Mark came to his conclusion, and he was able to let go, and he was able to understand that he doesn't need Steven. But I think Steven is still there. It's just that his heart was unbalanced until he got stuck in the sand, because at that point your soul is lost. So I think maybe there was still some, like you pointed out, like Steven hadn't completely come to grips with the fact that he was essentially made up, that his mother was actually dead. I think he has a lot of growing to do still. But in the end, that's why I can see Mark coming back for Steven. And also I just want to see more Mr. Knight, right?
Mr. Knight would be cool to see, right?
So I think there's going to be some aspect, something like that. And maybe at some point he's going to need Steven, especially when it comes to like hieroglyphics and all that. Like, he's the brains, right? So he's going to need him at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe when he brings back all the souls, because you saw the souls dropping right into the planes.
Exactly.
From Arthur. Maybe if he starts to bring some of those back, he might bring Steven back with him.
Honestly, I do feel like this show probably could have benefited from having like 9 episodes, or maybe an additional episode, just because I swear I promised myself, I was like, oh, I can't wait for that episode 7. These next 2 episodes are going to be great. And I'm just pretty baffled that fact that there's only 1 episode left to wrap up everything.
It feels like it's just getting started almost kind of at this point. That's why I'm like, there's only an episode left. Interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely see where it goes. And I know there's been like rumors and stuff that there is no second season planned or anything. So I hope they don't just leave it on a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't think so, because Feige did say that he plans this character to be involved for the future of the MCU, at least the next 10 years. Obviously, and also too, Oscar Isaac talked about his version of the Midnight Suns, who that would include on the roster, and he obviously included himself. So for The only thing is that he just doesn't have a deal in place right now, but I think it's just a no-brainer. He's going to come back. I mean, he's had a lot of fun. You've seen him training for this and going above and beyond.
Yeah.
Obviously.
In that case, they might actually leave it with the cliffhanger if this gets resolved over the course of movies too.
That's true.
Yeah.
I
feel
would
like
leave
it's
the particular series unsatisfying, but it is an option that they could do.
Yeah. Well, and they can also do. I know a lot of people are talking about Midnight Suns and how they want a Midnight Suns movie. I would not object getting a Midnight Suns series too.
I think that could work.
And
I would probably prefer that over a film, honestly, because I feel like with all
So
those
many
characters,
characters,
it would just be better to develop and have all those characters in a series.
And I think it worked well with the Defenders series. Obviously, Iron Fist. We don't talk about Iron Fist, but with the other characters, I think having it in a series and bringing everyone together in multiple episodes really worked out. So I think it'd be really cool to see that. And I know Kevin Feige announced, or I think it was during an interview during CinemaCon, that he said that they're going on a retreat. Him and like the rest of Marvel Studios are going on a super expensive retreat to plan out the next 10 years of the MCU. Right. So I think there's always going to be a plan in place. And the fact that he has said that Moon Knight's going to be a key part of that moving forward, it'll make a lot of sense, especially with how much people are loving the show right now, right? Like I've been seeing people like on Twitter and on TikTok, everyone saying like this is top 3 MCU show. Some people saying like this is the best MCU show. So it's getting a lot of love right now. So they would probably pay the big bucks to retain Oscar Isaac and move forward.
Definitely. Especially just because I feel like we just haven't even seen that much of Moon Knight, honestly.
I know.
We've had like, 2 action sequences with him?
Yeah. That's probably another thing Oscar meant by calling this a character study. You're really getting to know the person more than you are like the superhero persona or the anti-hero persona.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're learning about Bruce Wayne without the money and with severe mental problems. So that's always cool. But
Bruce Wayne has his own mental problems.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not quite sure I would say he's mentally balanced, but okay.
I mean, compared to this guy, though, I mean,
I'm pretty sure if he went to the end, his scales might not be balanced.
I know, right?
Reconciled his pain.
But
that's a good one.
That's all the time we have for today. Make sure you guys check out Moon Knight. It has only 1 episode left, and then Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is coming out next week. We will definitely be super excited to be covering that and all of the repercussions and what's going to happen next for the future of the MCU. So thank you guys for joining us today. Make sure you hit that like button, click that subscribe, share your friends, tell your family about us, and follow us on IG at Heroes and Mutants Podcast. We'll see you next week. Thank you guys so much. Peace out.
See ya.